Hello, everybody, and welcome to the event today. My name's Alice Roberts. I'm from CPRE London. We're coordinating the More Natural Capital Coalition. So the coalition is a coalition of some of the biggest and best environment organisations, both London and national. And we came together some years ago now to influence policy and critically action among London boroughs and also from the London Mayor. We essentially aim to protect and enhance London's environment for the benefit of both people and wildlife. And at election time, we come together because it makes a lot of sense for us to work together to create a manifesto where we can let everybody know, that's the voters and candidates and local sitting councillors, what we think that they can do and sign up to in the next for their manifestos so that they can so excuse me um, for the election. So what we've done this year is we've come up with 10 pledges, and these are pledges which are realistically achievable within a 4-year term. They're incredibly important. They're things that we really not just want councils to do, but we really feel that they absolutely must do these in order to protect and enhance London's environment. So I was very, very excited today to have so many people from the coalition and the organisations, some of our biggest and best organisations and some of the greatest campaigners around, to talk about the 10 pledges. So we're going to go through them one by one. And then we're going to talk about what you can do if you're a Londoner or a member of the public, which is we're asking people to sign and share a petition to say that they want their candidates to sign the pledges. And we've also created a way that candidates can sign the pledges. So we'll be showing you where you can do that throughout the webinar. So I'm going to be we're going to go quickly because we've got 10 pledges, so we've got to get through all of them. And then there will be time for hopefully for maybe for a few questions at the end. We hope so. We'll try to end by about 1:30, but we're on till about 1:45 if we don't quite make it. So hopefully everybody can stay until then. Right, so here we go. Where am I? So this is here we go. Right. So first of all, we have our first pledge is in terms of protecting trees to record all ancient, veteran and notable trees in a borough register of heritage trees and commit to their protection, including tree preservation orders where appropriate. And we've got Bridget Fox from the Woodland Trust to talk about this. So hi, Bridget, and off you go.
Thank you, and a great pleasure to be here and to see so many people interested in what we can do to improve London's environment. And boroughs are already doing great work planting trees, but we need to protect what we've got. And the picture shows the white Webb's oak in Enfield, which was felled without any warning or consent last April. One of London's great trees, nearly 500 years old, 6 metres in girth, a living legend. And its felling really shocked Londoners and people across the country. But even more shocking than that was the problem it exposed, which was there was no legal remedy we could take against the people who'd felled the tree despite the outcry. Unlike the Sycamore Gap, it wasn't part of an ancient monument, so there were no charges of criminal damage to be brought. It was too small to require a felling licence, despite being a single massive tree. No planning permission was in play, planning consent, so the legal protections in the National Planning Policy Framework didn't apply. And there was no tree preservation order in place because its owners, the local authority, had no plans to fell it or allow it to be felled. And so frustratingly, although there's a horrific and wrong thing that happened, there was no remedy. And one of the things the contractors said was that the tree wasn't on any list. To them, it was just any other tree. So whereas listed buildings like White Webb's house, one side of the tree, and ancient woodland like White Webb's wood on the other side of the tree, Um, Both are on official registers, the Register of Listed Buildings and Ancient Monuments held by English Heritage, the Register of Ancient Woodland held by Natural England. Individual ancient and veteran trees, even though they have the same protection in planning law, are not on any official register. The Woodland Trust holds the Ancient Tree Inventory, which is a citizen science register, but there's nothing official about it. And although the government has planned to take action, and I'm not with Guy Fawkes, who allegedly plotted at Webb's house on this. But we are a little frustrated that the government has not acted sooner. But the good news is that there are things that borough councils can and should do straight away. Hence our pledge. So our pledge, as Alice has said, is to set up a borough register of heritage trees so that they can be properly officially recorded and no one has any excuses for not knowing that these trees are valuable and merit protection. The good news is that councils can easily do this. Councils already have powers to locally list buildings without going through English Heritage and to apply tree preservation orders. We've got the data already on many of these trees on the Ancient Tree Inventory and other citizen science and voluntary records like Paulwood's Great Trees of London, for example. Plus, there's an army of volunteer tree champions and local tree recorders and verifiers who are ready to help fill any gaps in the data. So this is an easy measure that councils can do. It costs very little. It's really basically setting up a website to collate the existing data for their boroughs. Yet it could have a huge impact in saving trees, and it will be very popular, which is not unimportant at election time. Recent polling by More in Common for our host, CPRE, found that 75% of people want better protection for nature. And earlier last year, polling by Forest Research found that another 75% of people want better protection for trees. So this would be a popular policy too. So there it is. It's a smart pledge that every council and every councillor and council candidate can commit to now. And by doing this, we can work together to better protect London's surviving living legends for the future. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bridget. So moving on to Pledge 2, which is one of two pledges around cleaning up our rivers. And Pledge 2 is to create at least one new area of wetland in the borough where feasible. And by where feasible, we mean only not feasible where a borough has literally got no green space, which is so we definitely want all boroughs to really consider doing this. And including by deculverting rivers. And I'm introducing myself on this one. I'm going to do it very quickly because we've got a much more expert speaker for Pledge 3, which is also about cleaning rivers and which is related. So creating wetlands. London's rivers, as you know, under extreme pressure, surface water floodings increasing, road runoff pollution flows in many parts of London roads flows straight into rivers. And many rivers remain buried and need daylighting. So we can create urban wetlands, which are nature-based infrastructure, a nature-based solution to some of our river and water management, surface water management problems. They can intercept and treat polluted runoff, capture peak rainwater flows. They also enhance biodiversity. And you can demonstrate local delivery easily with planning and delivering one of these within your next 4-year term if you're a councillor. But I want to move on to Toby Dighero, who's from Thames 21, who's going to talk about the related pledge, which is around clean rivers, Pledge 3, to prioritise the installation of well-designed on-street rain gardens where other street works are planned and directly support householders to capture rainfall and regreen and depave front gardens. So Toby, over to you.
Hi there. Next slide, if you could, please. It's just an introductory slide. So I'll just give a bit of background on water in London, on surface water particularly. So as Alice said, we have lots of surface water and that runs off hard surfaces and concrete, and lots of that ends up going straight into our rivers, but a lot of it also ends up going to these gullies. And when there's heavy rainfall, our sewer systems get overwhelmed and there's an increased risk of flooding. So essentially, the fewer harder surfaces we have, the more rainwater that's going to get soaked up. So what are rain gardens? And rain gardens are just one type of regreening or depaving or anything you want to call that. But we'll talk about rain gardens specifically for now. Uh, Rain gardens are a way of managing water by mimicking natural drainage systems. So they store and hold water locally, reducing the peak flows that enter our sewer systems. So and they'll then slowly release that usually, or it'll go filter into the ground. So they really slow down that process of water rushing off into our sewers. And I think we all know that flooding is a problem. In London, in particular, it's a real problem. 1 in 8 properties are at medium or high risk of flooding, which is much higher than most other places in the UK. So there are lots of benefits of rain gardens. I think sort of the most obvious one is the flood resilience, that reduced amount of water sort of filling our sewers and causing flooding, but they help improve the water quality. When water sort of enters rain gardens, it filters slowly through. There's often plants which can take up pollutants in their roots. They are often beautiful. They can help transform public spaces into a really enjoyable place to be. Often community members get involved and help plant these rain gardens, so there's a real sense of community ownership. They help cool down our cities. So we all know that another issue of climate change is increased temperatures, so this is another benefit here. They provide shelter, food, and homes for wildlife. So pollinators such as bees, butterflies will use plants and rain gardens as a really valuable source of food and shelter. And I think most importantly, they're very cheap to install and really simple to maintain, especially when there's already streetworks planned. So that's a real push for when a borough is doing streetworks, you may as well also try and install a rain garden. If you're digging up the ground, you can combo that and install a rain garden too. So I'll just move on to a quick example. I worked with Hounslow Council, London Borough of Hounslow last year, along with Thames Water. And we, or I'd say, as a collective, we delivered 9 rain garden schemes across the borough. And a key focus of this was involving the community. So we built a community engagement program, and that helped build understanding of rain gardens, acceptance of rain gardens, and sort of an increased sense of stewardship as well over these rain gardens. That picture on the left is like an open day that we had. We held open days at all the sites, and they helped sort of increase local interest, and I think answered a lot of questions around people being quite skeptical around rain gardens. So it helped reduce skepticism as well. We combined sort of hyper-local engagement on site with sort of more borough-wide communications to try and reach as many people as possible. And residents were actively involved throughout. So picking plants, that sort of middle picture and the picture on the right, picking plants for the rain gardens. And we held some long-term maintenance. We sort of organized long-term maintenance days and groups as well. And I think projects like these really demonstrate that street level nature interventions and nature-based solutions can really transform a place and a perception of the place as well. They help build local identity around flood resilience and sort of promoting the environmental cause. And I think in Hounslow, there are some rivers, but there's not that many rivers in the areas we planted these rain gardens. And I think projects like these show that nature-based solutions for flooding can succeed even in areas without rivers. So overall, they're just really great, and I think a real priority for London's boroughs. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Toby. And I hope that you're starting to get a feel for how these pledges are really practical, realistic interventions that we really feel boroughs candidates can sign up to and genuinely deliver over a four-year term. So moving on to pledge 4, this is going to be me again. I think this might be my last one, but so one of the pledges under green and blue space, under a heading of green and blue space, home for nature and green space for all, is to actively bring back into use at least one derelict or what we call land banked green site. So it can become a nature reserve, a playing field, a park, a growing space, or a wetland. So what many of you may or may not know is that there are a very large number of sites around London, which we have mapped, but we actually don't publicise this map because of our concern.
Alice, you mute.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Somebody muted me then. I'm not sure what happened. Well, did you hear my beginning bit?
Yes, we can hear you. Just got muted for a few seconds.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, so all over London, there are sites which have been bought mainly by developers or simply by what we would call land bankers. So they might even just be held by one of the pension funds, for example. And they don't do anything. They just sit there. They're fenced off. And this there are sites like this all over London. A lot of them are in outer London, but there are sites in inner London, and this one is in Newham. It's the Lee Road Sports Ground. It's been closed for living memory, and it's really big, and it's in an area which is very deficient of green space, and certainly also of space where people can play for playing fields and also nature depleted. So what I wanted to show you, though, is that there are many other sites. So this is up in Barnet, and this is an interesting site. It used to be apparently the Metropolitan Police Sports Ground and has been, as you can see, left for a very, very long period of time. And these sites are in limbo. So we call this map Limbo London. We don't publicise it because we're not, keen for developers to start finding even more sites. But we know that these sites come under threat from development. They are at risk, and we really, really want boroughs to find these sites and to bring at least one of them, really work actively to bring one of them back into use. So we've tried to map them. Here's our map. There are many more. There will be many more out there. We just do it by looking on Google Satellite View, to be honest, but also there are a number of sites which are part of our 10 New Parks for London campaign, where local groups are trying to bring sites which have been fenced off and left to dereliction back into use. So yeah, so the pledge is that we want councils to bring at least one site back into use, but ideally more. So moving on. So the second pledge under this heading: ensure all green and blue spaces are properly funded, thrive, and are all managed to green flag standards, and sign the Parks Charter. So to talk about this, we've got two of our coalition members, Tim Webb from London Parks and Gardens. Sorry, I got the name of that wrong, and Dave Morris from London Friends of Green Spaces Network. So Tim and Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Alice. London Parks and Gardens is the charity behind London Open Gardens every June, and as an affiliate of the Gardens Trust, act as statutory consultees in the planning process. That means we help enable good development in heritage green spaces, places which carry social, cultural value, play vital roles in biodiversity, habitat creation, and climate resilience. Giving evidence to the GLA Environment Committee last week, there was unanimous recognition of one hidden but major achievement over the last decade: the extraordinary impact of individuals, volunteers and grassroots organisations who champion London's green and blue spaces. Their energy is inspiring, their contributions are real, but too often the interventions are fleeting and uncoordinated, not because of a lack of passion or determination, but because of a lack of core funding. That's the crux of our fifth manifesto ask. We routinely see eye-catching projects, new orchards, green gyms, upgraded facilities attract funding. The quiet, essential work of maintenance rarely does, and without long-term support, the investment in new features becomes simply unsustainable. A toilet block without funds for cleaning or emptying bins, an orchard without funds for pruning or watering. These become symbolic of a deeper structural failure impacting social cohesion and pride, as well as parks' integrity. There's a national quality benchmark for parks, the Green Flag Award. It's the only nationally recognised standard for public green spaces, but applying for assessment requires payment. And with the latest rounds of cuts to parks budgets, some local authorities are reconsidering whether they can afford even that. It doesn't mean quality is failing, but it does mean the public perception of quality will. The lack of visible awards will drop simply due to a lack of funds. The funding situation is stark. A major national review by APS, that's the Association for Public Service Excellence, found a £190 million cut from UK parks revenue budgets in just the last 5 years, the steepest decline in over a decade. Here in London, we see the same pattern, massive local authority budget reductions buried within broader cuts, yet acutely in every park, garden and green corridor across the city, we feel those cuts. We are in the midst of a parks funding emergency. Parks are recognised nationally, regionally and locally by government as essential urban infrastructure. They're our health spaces, our climate buffers, our community anchors, but that recognition's not matched by investment. If we want these spaces to thrive, if we want them to be resilient, inclusive, safe and biodiverse, we must restore their financial foundations. Without sustainable long-term funding, we risk losing not just the improvements of recent years, but the very quality of the spaces we as individuals, communities and Londoners love and depend upon. Thank you. Over to you, Dave.
Dave, are you there? Dave Morris.
We seem to have lost Dave.
Oh, no.
Shall I pick up and then go back to Dave?
Let's do that. So pledge 6, and I was just going to say, so that is pledge 5, but perhaps we should just say, please do remember that that pledge includes to sign the Parks Charter, and we will make that available. So pledge 6 is green under this heading, green and blue space for all and a home for nature. Protect local wildlife sites, green belt, metropolitan open land, valuable and heritage green spaces in your local plan, all through local green space, fields in trust or village green status. And to talk about this is Helen Munger from the Open Spaces Society. So take it away, Helen.
Thanks, Alice, for encouraging us to come forward and speak about this. The Open Society believes that everyone has a right to access nature, use it and enjoy it with the use of public open spaces and rights of way for free. We've been fighting for that right for nearly 150 years, and we intend to continue. And part of that work we see as working alongside other organisations as part of the A More Natural Capital. So the Open Spaces Society was founded in 1865 as the Commons Preservation Society to save the rapidly disappearing commons of London. Our work now covers all of England and Wales and includes the protection of rights of way as well as open spaces. We are the oldest amenity society in the country and gave birth to the National Trust. Hampstead Heath, Epping Forest and Wimbledon Common were all early successes for the society and remain open for everybody to enjoy for free to this day, and have a number of legislative requirements which prevent them from being fenced off. The Society's founders included Lord Eversley, a Liberal MP, who, as a Commissioner of Works in the Gladstone government, opened Hampton Court Park, Kew Gardens and Regent's Park to the public. Octavia Hill and Robert Hunter were also early activists who then went on to found the National Trust. If I could have the next slide, please. Many public parks and other green spaces have statutory protections. That means they are enshrined in law, higher protection than planning policy. And what I'm here to do today is to unpick all of those different nomenclatures you saw in the pledge. So the first thing is I urge local councillors to know their park status and covenants. There are things like the 1931 London Squares Act, the 1906 Open Spaces Act, and individual acts that set up certain parks and gardens. And these are overlooked and costly. Record keeping is vital. Sounds simple, but many recent disputes have gone to court and some recent judgments have weakened the meaning of the acts. An example of a village green in London is Ruislip Village Green in the London Borough of Hillingdon, and that was registered through Section 15 of the Commons Act 1900. In fact, Hillingdon has a policy of registering greens, and it's a great thing that local authorities can do that voluntarily. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So the other alternative, if it hasn't got a legal protection, is that you can use planning. The NPPF consultation is open until the 10th of March. It is currently actively weakening biodiversity and green space protections and hence access to green space. They're CPRE has just launched a request that people particularly comment on Green Belt Policy 6 and Green Belt Policy 7 to object to them because they will weaken it still further. Local plans and neighbourhood plans define areas of local importance through spatial mapping. And there are a number of types of site, and the person who follows me will be able to speak more about local wildlife sites. But if we can go on to the next slide, I'll unpick each of those terms: local wildlife site, green belt, and local green space. So the first, local wildlife sites. The definition: local wildlife sites are areas identified by boroughs, often with London Wildlife Trust input, as being of substantive value for biodiversity at a local level. They are a non-statutory but are material consideration in planning, and I emphasise material consideration, with an expectation that biodiversity value is protected and enhanced. And this is an example here: Sydenham Hill Wood, London Borough of Lewisham, an ancient woodland remnant with high ecological value, and it was designated due to its habitats and species diversity. Next slide, please. So we then move on to green belt and metropolitan open land. I've lumped them together, but they are actually two separate nomenclatures, two separate categories, but they hold more or less the same legal equivalence in planning terms. So if we look at in the metropolitan green belt in London for urban areas, the definition here is green belt is a strategic planning designation intended to prevent urban sprawl, safeguard the countryside from encroachment, and preserve the setting of towns. And it is strongly protected also under the national and London plan policies. However, the 2024 NPPF weakened policies by introducing the concept of grey belt and golden rules. If land is not formally designated beyond green belt, it is vulnerable to development, as Alice touched on earlier. And examples include, as you see here, Cruise Hill in the London Borough of Enfield. This is part of the metropolitan green belt surrounding London, but is not metropolitan open land, and it is not registered common land. It consists mainly of agricultural and semi-rural countryside between the village of Cruise Hill and the M25, and it is relatively accessible. The green belt here served to prevent urban sprawl north from London and maintain the open character of the fringe landscape. Metropolitan open land, as I said, is a London-specific designation that provides the same level of protection. It is reserved for land of strategic importance for recreation, landscape ecology, or historic value. And again, Tim can talk more about historic value. An example of that would be Victoria Park, which is designated as metropolitan open land because of its strategic importance as a large, continuous area of open space, its major recreational role for East London, and its contribution to urban openness and landscape character. Unlike sites such as Blackheath or Wimbledon Common, Victoria Park is not registered common land, but it receives equivalent protection to its metropolitan open land status under the London Plan. It is also protected in that instance through the Open Spaces Act 1906. But there are other sites which have only metropolitan open land protection and are weakened by the new NPPF. Next slide, please. Local green space. And this is an example in Lambeth. The definition of local green space is a designation under the National Planning Policy Framework. It allows communities through either local or neighbourhood plans to give strong protection to small, locally important green spaces that are close to the community, demonstrably special, either historic, recreational, scenic, or ecological reasons. And protection once there is equivalent to greenbelt policy. This particular example was only designated as local green space in the Kennington Oval and Vauxhall Neighbourhood Plan referendum that went through in December of 2025 due to its community value, views, and its recreational importance. So you can see there's a hodgepodge of different designations. We've all come together. So thank you. Final slide is, what can you do now, particularly if you work for a council or if you're about to be elected a councillor? First and foremost, obviously, we're all here to tell you to sign up to the pledges. They're simple, they're practical, they're meaningful. But secondly, I want you to really look at the records you hold, and designate spaces in your local plans and neighbourhood plans as either local green space or in some way special to protect them. With housing policy pressures, they will not be protected unless you do so. And also look at public rights of access over land. Registration as village greens is one of the most powerful tools in your toolbox. You can do so voluntarily as a council. Or if you can't do that, then dedicate your parks with fields in trust or use of other covenants to make sure that they cannot be developed in the future. I'm pleased to hand over now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Helen. And what an amazing canter through what are in fact a real arsenal, a veritable arsenal of protections, both legal and planning, that you can, if if your borough really wants to, they can take action to protect spaces which are currently unprotected. And we really desperately need that to happen right now with the current what's no less than an attack on nature. Coming through from planning policy, which is underpinned by a lot of housing policy too. So that's a discussion for another day, but we just want to make absolutely clear that it is possible and that we really need boroughs to be protecting sites, small and large. So moving on now, under this pledge, under this heading, Green and Blue Space for All and a Home for Nature, the final one is Pledge 7, give every community access to nature on their doorstep and deliver London's nature recovery priorities in the borough, including new wildlife corridors and nature habitat. So to talk about this is very, very happy to have with us Richard Barnes from the London Wildlife Trust. So Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Alice. Also, I'm delighted to be here and to see so many on the call is absolutely fantastic. Following on seamlessly, I hope, access to nature uses the local wildlife system, which in many boroughs may not have recently been reviewed. Next slide, please. Right, brilliant. This is practical and achievable within a 4-year term. And basically, it's because local plans are the land use frameworks for the future of a borough and should be up to date, have the most weight when considering planning applications. They have to be in conformity with the London plan, and action on this is encouraged in that. So as you can see from this slide, your boroughs should review its sites of importance to nature conservation, or SINCs, which is the London designation for local wildlife sites. So also so next slide, please, Alice. Whilst
sorry, I'm just trying to make it move forward. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Just give
but
me
basically, there's also a requirement. The next slide is going to show that there is also a requirement in the London plan to map areas' deficiency in access to nature. Okay, well, we can forward it when we send the slide pack around. Basically, access to nature is about being within a kilometre's walking distance of a high quality site, or basically a borough grade or metropolitan grade site of importance to nature conservation. And as we've found out, the access to nature is so important for health and well-being, and this was highlighted for a much bigger audience during lockdown in 2020 and 21. At its simplest, to address areas of deficiency in access to nature, a borough can either increase the nature value of a local site or increase new access. For example, opening up rivers hidden underground, going under a park, or perhaps having new entrances to a nature site, or perhaps one of my favourite examples is a footbridge over a railway line that opened up a park in Islington to a much wider audience. But the great news is that there's plenty of guidance. Green space information for Greater London maps SINCs and areas of deficiencies and have a resource hub for local planning authorities and local communities. And I will post the link to that resource hub in the chat. And in answer to a question that came up about local nature recovery strategies, or LNRS, the LNRSs can certainly help identify where to increase the nature value of a site and help nature recovery. Thank you.
So, Richard, I'm very, very sorry. I'm not sure how we lost the rest of your slides, but it seems that they're just not here. And so the next slide is, in fact, I don't know why my screen's not allowing me to move between slides now. I was
Okay,
doing it so perfectly before.
the other one was just going to have the second paragraph in that policy G6, which talks about mapping areas of deficiency to nature. So that's fine. We can put it in the in what we send around to people.
We'll do
No
that.
worries.
Okay, thank you so much. Richard, and now we're going to move. We're doing well. We're moving on to Pledge 8, which is a right to grow, to support the right to grow campaign, including by creating more orchards and community food growing spaces on unused land. And to talk about this, we have Rachel Dring from Sustain. So over to you, Rachel, and I'm going to attempt your slides. So here we go.
Great. Thank you. So I'm from Sustain, which is the National Alliance for Better Food and Farming, and I run Capital Growth, the London-wide food growers network. And we support food growing in all its many forms, from community gardens, allotments, city farms, community orchards, food forests, and edible planting in town centres, schools, canal sides, you name it. But our focus is on nature-friendly, climate-resilient, and inclusive food growing. And we know that community growing has been increasing in popularity, and it's incredibly empowering antidote to the current climate of political division, cost of living crisis, and the climate and nature emergency. People feel powerless in these times, and community gardens, they're just a space where people can just take matters into their own hands, improve their neighborhoods, and grow their own food all at the same time. But accessing land and holding on to it is a key challenge. And we've already heard that, protecting land is so difficult at the moment, and funding it is also, all these horrendous budget cuts make it really challenging. But councils have a key part to play. They're a key landowner in this space, with 60% of community gardens based on community or public authority land. So there is a lot of potential to do so much more with neglected and unloved pieces of land. But there are institutional challenges. So the right to grow legislation, which was developed by Incredible Edible a few years ago, it has the potential to democratize access to land and dismantle these institutional barriers listed here. I'm not going to go through them all because I don't have time. It will remove these institutional barriers and enable these enthusiastic and capable community groups to just get on with it, transforming neglected spaces into beautiful, vital green spaces for everyone to enjoy. People and insects and all matters of life can enjoy it. So, with increasingly cash-strapped councils, this kind of partnership is a win-win. Next slide, please. So the right to grow, it's basically, it's where a council commits to mapping out what land is available for growing and greening, and provides a clear pathway for residents to request land. And this is really vital because this is the equity piece. It means that there's clear and fair process for people to access land, and it's not just about who you know or who can shout the loudest. And then the council would commit to providing free license agreements or leases for those groups so that they've got some security of tenure. So this is a very popular policy area in London, and there are grassroots right to grow campaign groups popping up all over London, independently of each other, to demand a right to grow in their borough. And they're now coming together under a umbrella group that Incredible Edible is leading on to support each other. And also, so many councils are keen to as well. In our Good Food Local survey that we do every year at Sustain, 23 out of the 33 councils in London have expressed an interest in right to grow in the last year. But in terms of who's actually doing it, it's a very new thing. And so far in London, only Southwark has passed a right to grow. And they passed it a couple of years ago. And since then, they have created 41 growing sites, mostly on housing estates, because Southwark is the main kind of social housing provider. And that's enabled 250 individual sort of mini plots to be allocated to local residents. And the way they do it is they have 2 officers who support a local food growers network. They deal with requests for land and they support groups to get started. And they crucially support them to form an organization so that they can fundraise themselves. So it's not all on the council to provide all the money. But there's a potential for it to take on many different forms, like allotment style plots are one thing, but there's also space for community orchards and edible forests in parks and marshlands. There's, potential for community market gardens to pop up around the outskirts of London on those disused sites. Brownfield sites in a city London could have more thriving community gardens. And it's something that's very visual, it's very hopeful, and it uplifts an area. And it's something that's very achievable in a 4-year term. It generally takes about a year to pass the right to grow motion, and then, a year or 2 to get people onto the land and growing. So in terms of what's happening in London, Capital Growth is supporting councils to implement the right to grow in their council. And if you're interested in learning more, you can contact me, and we'll provide my email address. And there's a London Learning Network, which will get going in spring, which has regular online sessions where you can learn more about the right to grow. And there's a thriving WhatsApp group of campaigners and all sorts of people that are involved in right to grow. And Incredible Headable has a website with loads of resources that you can download as well. So just keep in touch.
Amazing. Okay, and that's amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, so we definitely need boroughs signing up to the right to grow and candidates supporting this pledge. If you could pop that link in the chat, that would be amazing. And so we're going to move on now. We're at about 15:15, so we're going to have to stick to our time. Next speakers, please. And we've got 2 pledges under green and healthy streets, and I don't want to skimp on the time here because this is one of the most important things. The streets are where we spend probably most of our time, and so this pledge 9 is transform at least one street in your borough into a local nature-rich park in a neighbourhood lacking public green space, like Alfred Place Gardens in Camden. That was an example we wanted to show. So Carolyn is going to talk about this and other interventions that you can make to make your streets green and healthy in the next 4 years. Carolyn.
Hi folks, so I'm from Possible. For those who don't know us, we're a national climate charity. We work on different mission areas, including sustainable transport, but also things like aviation, community energy, circular economy. We've got fixing factories in a number of different boroughs. And this is a really important part of our work that links both sustainable transport and urban greening. So, as Alice said, this pledge is to transform at least one street in your borough into a local nature-rich park in a neighbourhood that's lacking in public green space. And if you want to move on to the next slide, Alice, we've got a picture of Alfred Place Gardens in Camden. And for anyone who's not familiar with it, it's just behind Tottenham Court Road. It's in an area that was really lacking in green space. There isn't a park nearby. And I think you will agree this is a huge transformation. So this is a way of fulfilling lots of different strategic objectives. Obviously, it can help with increasing tree canopy, cooling streets, creating places for community benefit to bring people together, improving active travel, access to nature, your local nature recovery strategy, all of the things that we've heard about today. And we believe there's scope to do this and a need to do this in every borough. And one of the reasons is heat. Obviously, there's loads of different reasons why this needs to be done urgently, but heat is obviously increasing year on year. We had the hottest year on record. The heat waves are getting higher and higher. We had 40 degrees in summer 2022 in London. I'm sure you'll remember. And obviously, this is massive risk, to our populations, particularly where people don't have anywhere cool to be inside and they've got nowhere cool to be outside. If you can go on to the next slide, Alice. So we do know that from studies that parked cars can raise temperatures by nearly 4 degrees in streets, whereas trees can reduce them by 8 degrees. So that's potential to make a massive difference and in terms of making our streets much more livable. And we've actually got a project, curbside greening, which I'm just going to talk about briefly. We are looking for more local authority partners to work with so we can effectively help you with achieving this aim. We've also got lots of great resources on parklets, which you can check out. And if you just skip to the next slide, Alice, I'll talk a little bit about the curbside greening work. We're currently working in the London Borough of Newham. It's funded by City Bridge Foundation. And we basically do this kind of deep engagement work with communities to find out more about their experience of the neighbourhood and to ultimately make it politically easier for you to repurpose parking for urban greening, because we know this is something where you might experience a lot of opposition, but this is a way to do it in a way that's resident led ultimately. And we can probably just flick through the next few slides, Alice. So these are the workshops we've been doing recently. So that's Seabert Road in Forest Gate. And you can see that it's completely bare. We're probably not going to get that one transformed into a park, although that's what the residents were telling us last night they would ideally like to see. But there may be another road where we could possibly do that. So we're working with Active Travel Academy. We share the recommendations. Sorry, that's my 3.5 minutes up. We'll share the recommendations with the council and work with them to actually plant trees. And of course, there's so many strategic objectives that can be fulfilled with this on all of the different aspects of the London plan. We've got a data explorer that shows where curbside trees are most needed, and that combines lots of different data sets, including car parking and pavement widths. So it shows you where we can't be putting the trees on the pavement. We need to be repurposing parking for them. And if you skip through to the next slides, Alice, yeah, potentially we might do a billboard campaign, as we've done with other projects, to really get like wider support from residents. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, do get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Incredible resources there at Possible, and really, really good understanding of how complex it is to deliver change to streets on the ground. So definitely an offer of support there that I would be grabbing if I was a local councillor, which I'm not, and I'm not standing as a candidate either. So our final pledge under this is to deliver healthy, safe streets with low traffic, including through livable neighbourhoods and reallocating parking spaces for urban greening, tree planting and benches. Of course, we know that that there is a long path ahead, but there are lots and lots and lots of things that you can do. And we're really delighted to have David Harrison from London Living Streets being the pedestrian campaign for anyone who doesn't know. So, David, I know you don't have any slides, but you are here somewhere, I hope. So,
yeah, just here. Great. Well, delighted to be here. So what's the problem? We know that we have just suffered terribly from the motor vehicle domination of our streets. This is something that happened through much of the 20th century. Examples, Park Lane was turned into a motorway. At all sorts of tiny levels, streets were made easier to drive around and more difficult to walk through. There's been a gradual rebalancing, but there's much further to go. And we see really the main sign of just how bad our streets are the huge numbers of injuries and deaths on our roads. So in 2024, there were over 3,700 people were killed or seriously injured. There are 110 deaths, and well over half of these were pedestrian deaths. So we've created streets that are, in a sense, death traps for pedestrians. And of course, for young people and children, this is one of the main causes of death. There's much more that pedestrian can be done to address this. And one of the most obvious ways are low traffic neighbourhoods. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has examined, together with the University of Westminster, has examined over 100 LTNs that have been installed in London in recent years. They found an amazing reduction in the numbers of people killed and seriously injured by a third. So these simple measures to reduce traffic in neighbourhoods can have a huge impact on lives. And I think that really is worth considering. It's a really important study. Even better is if you can combine the low traffic neighbourhoods with urban greening, tree planting, new benches to create a more visible, livable neighbourhood, which is what these are called in some places. We've had a great deal about rain gardens already, valuable information in this webinar. You've seen Alfred Place and you've seen the rain gardens that were talked about at the beginning. Car ownership in parts of London is falling, and this provides huge opportunities for repurposing that road space in this way. It's not just low traffic neighbourhoods, though, that can be done. Main roads can be addressed, and one of the very best examples is in Newham at Silvertown Way, where a lane of traffic, the amount of space for traffic was reduced, and then there were broad pavements which could provide broad pavements, cycle lanes, and rain gardens to create, even on a main road, an attractive space to walk. This can be improved even further if you can close off some of the side road junctions that are there. Other things you can do, as Westminster has successfully shown, is introduce side road zebras. These are zebras that don't have Belisha beacons, that go across junctions at side roads, and these have increased compliance from motor vehicles turning into those roads by a huge amount. But we need to prioritise, obviously, and councils in these times only have a certain amount of money. I think one of the places we'd like to see prioritised is around schools and for children. More and more councils can introduce school streets, but they might even consider extending that into school areas. And they can do a great deal to make the area just outside the school pleasanter and safer. So councils are removing guardrails to stop children charging into the road and replacing them with rain gardens and planters that the children themselves can help maintain. So you have exactly the same safety function, but in a much more delightful way. But the other thing I think we really need to focus on, given how limited funds are creating strategic walking networks. Councils should think, what are the great walking routes that people like to use between key destinations, to get to high streets, to stations, to parks. Now, I'm also co-founder of Footways, which creates quite an enjoyable walking routes along quite an enjoyable streets, linking up these key destinations. I would dearly ask councils to focus on that. So there you go. There's a great deal that can be done in 4 years, and a great deal to unpack all the terrible things that were done in the 20th century to make our streets a really pleasant place to walk and be. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. And I think, you know, what we're not asking is for everybody to put in low traffic neighbourhoods all over their borough right now, but we are asking some boroughs who are on that path to do that, and to continue to do that, and for those who are on a different path to make sure that they are thinking about those other measures, which will make a big difference. So whether you take action on main roads, on speed limits, on regreening your roads, whatever it is, the pledge is there to make sure that that we don't forget that we need to make our streets much better and safer and healthier and greener. So thank you so much. So that's the 10 pledges. I'm going to just go quickly now through what we're asking candidates to do, and what we're asking you, the members of the public, to do. So we've created a page where candidates. So we know that not all candidates have been announced yet, but we know that some have, and we really want any candidates out there who have already declared that they're standing to sign their pledge. So there's a simple form on the website which explains what you're pledging to, and essentially you're pledging to champion these pledges in your manifesto, and if you become a councillor. So We're putting that. I'm hoping that that one of my colleagues is putting that link in the chat right now, or re-putting it in. And then for members of the public, we need you to sign our petition now to ask your May election candidates to back the pledges. So we've just launched this today, so you may not see hundreds of signatures yet, but we hope you will sign it today, and then we'll have hundreds, and then if you share it, we'll have hundreds more. And that's going to be a way that we can show the candidates across London that these pledges really matter. Yeah, we really need everybody to talk about this, and how there really are things that your councillors can do, that change really does start in your borough, that it's possible and it's achievable. And I think Helen used the terms practical and meaningful, and I think that those really sum up what we've tried to do here. That they really do make meaningful change to your borough. They make changes that will have a real impact on your life. And they are realistic. You know, we have thought about this, and we really want to make sure we know that boroughs are under massive amounts of financial pressure, and we really wanted to make these practical. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, I think that's my last one. Yeah, stop sharing now. And just wanted to give, if we do have any questions in the last few minutes, anyone a chance to say something or answer or ask a question. Right now, if you have, put your hand up if you know how to. It's never that easy. While I'm looking to see if anybody would like to ask or say anything, then I will ask you all to sign that petition if you can, please, and share it. That would be amazing. That's just the start. For councillors, councillors who are out there, or candidates, please do get in touch with us if you want to know anything more, or if you want any help from any of the organisations in the coalition. I do have a couple of hands up, so Connor.
Thank you very much, Alice, and thank you to all the speakers. It's really great and inspiring to live in an area where people care about this stuff. There's obviously trade-offs in many policies, and one of the things I'm interested in is affordable housing. So given the need to make housing affordable, what would coalition members' positions be on the trade-offs to be made with the provision of homes for young people and new families? I think higher density solutions like flat blocks are sometimes a nice, like, have your cake and eat it too. But I think that if I were to bring this to a councillor, or a councillor might come back at me at it, housing seems to be probably like a common thing, and probably it's not the appropriate place to put it in a pledge, but I'm wondering if the coalition members could comment on their thoughts on that.
I think that CPRE London probably talks most about this, and we certainly have a link from our front page on why we feel that that building on green spaces doesn't do anything to solve the housing crisis, and that relates back to the fact that we are building a lot of homes, we're permitting a lot of homes, but that the housing crisis is not rooted in the number of homes, it's rooted in the affordability and the lack of social housing. So we don't think that the two things are linked, in the sense that solving the housing crisis is about getting housing to be more in line with incomes again, and the solutions to that are different to just building more homes. And that's a very political argument, which I think you're right is not one necessarily to go in today. And I feel like, you know, we really need to, or want to, focus on the things which boroughs can do, and try not to undermine it with the idea that you can't do this because of housing issues.
Right.
But thank you for asking that question. Richard Fox. Richard, hi.
Yes, hi, Alice. It's Richard and Julia here. Thank you for a fantastic session, everybody, all the speakers. I'm afraid we had a few connection issues. We were on the move at the start. Just to say, there is so much information. Are you going to share all the slides and all the information in the chat with us? Because there's so much information in the chat that's really helpful as well.
Okay, yep, we certainly can do that. I have been trying not to look at the chat because it's to try to maintain focus, but we always try to take the chat and put it in a document and circulate it afterwards. So we'll do that, yes, and the slides. And the links to the slides, we'll put that on the news item. So if you go to our news page on our website, there's an article there already with all the links. We'll put the slides up and the recording up, and probably not the chat, but we can certainly send you that separately anyway.
Lovely, with all the links. And if you had any templates for contacting councillors, which I think has been raised, because obviously we all want to make the biggest impact in getting our councillors to take action. Yeah,
absolutely. And we have somebody called the Green Lawyer. So we take one more comment and then we'll move to wrapping up, hopefully. The Green Lawyer? Who's
Hi, my name's Jo. I just had one quick question which your panel might be able to answer, which is I'm noticing increasingly that councils are tarmacking right up to trees and surrounding the base, leaving them no space to breathe or soil for rainwater to get in. How do we tackle that? Is it with the council themselves?
I might pass that one to Bridget, if that's okay.
Hi there. Yeah, great question. For trees of a certain age and value, the sort of trees I was talking about protecting better at the start of the webinar, there is guidance on designating root protection areas within which any construction is supposed to be unlawful in terms of planning law. But in a crowded London environment, obviously we prefer to see trees in dedicated spaces like corners of green spaces, build outs in the road rather than blocking the pavement. But the Victorians love to put trees in the pavement, and we're living with those legacies. But a lot of boroughs are now using permeable surfacing, which provides a flexible surface. It's not absolutely level, but it's a weatherproof surface for people can safely traverse, but also accommodates the roots. And that's good practice in most London boroughs now. Bit of a problem in conservation areas where people want themselves a fancy York stone paving, something like that, which doesn't give so much room to breathe for the trees. But I think it's really important when we're establishing new trees that we plant them in places that are going to be good for the trees and good for their future neighbours as well.
And thanks. And I think that we kind of feel like, the rain gardens are there, important places to capture rainwater, and that trees are better placed within those rather than on the pavement where they may not be able to absorb water effectively. So yeah, thanks very much for that comment. So so I think I'll draw the webinar to a close. We've had a huge number of people here today, so I'm super happy that we've had so many people, that we can get started with this big campaign that we'll be asking. Please keep a lookout for what we'll be asking you to do, to sign the petition and to share this with everybody you know, so that petition really flies very quickly. And then, of course, candidates. When it comes to the time, we need candidates to sign the pledges. So we'll be really, really happy if you could also write to your candidates at the time when you know who they are. So that's a bit of a time away. So yeah, the elections, early May 2026. Very exciting. It's a huge, huge opportunity for us to influence what happens. We know that that there are meaningful, practical things that councils can do, and that these elections really do matter. So thank you so much to everybody, to our amazing coalition and all the speakers today, and to all of you for coming along. Many thanks and have a good day.
Thanks, Alice.
Thank you. Thank you very much.